since the books come out, I got a lot of stuff I wish I'd put in.
Well, we'll wait for volume
Right.
2.
Yeah.
Oh. Hello there, stranger. How do you do? There's something I'd like to see.
17 years ago, the town of Hensley Hollow was shaken by a mystery that would endure for nearly 2 decades. The inexplicable disappearance of Grandpa Jones, a fixture of the sleepy Appalachian community. He was known for his wiry beard, hand-carved walking stick, and a whistle that echoed down the valley every morning as predictably as the sunrise. On a crisp autumn day in October, he vanished without a trace, leaving behind a half-sipped mug of chicory coffee, a back porch light still glowing, and a community with more questions than answers. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The search was immediate and intense. Local volunteers combed the thick woods and caves that webbed through the surrounding hills. Helicopters beat the air overhead, and scent hounds tracked to a dead stop at the edge of Cold Creek Ridge. For days, the town buzzed with speculation. Some whispered of bear attacks, others of old enemies returning for revenge. A few even muttered about the old Cherokee tales Grandpa used to recount of spirits in the mountains who came for those they chose. But when no body was found, no sign of struggle, and no items taken from his modest home, the leads dried up and the case grew cold. Grandpa Jones had simply ceased to exist. Time passed, and with it the fire of active investigation faded. Yet some couldn't let it go. His granddaughter, Mandy, never stopped pressing the county sheriff for updates. Local historian Caleb Runnels archived every article, every sighting, every conspiracy. And online communities, some made up of townsfolk, others drawn in from the outside, continued digging, convinced there had to be something hidden behind the layers of silence. Then this year, something broke. It started not with a revelation from law enforcement or a confession, or even a chance discovery in the woods. It began with a renovation, specifically a demolition project at the old feed store 3 streets down from Grandpa's house. The building, abandoned and decaying, had been sold to a regional chain intending to gut it and rebuild. When workers tore down a crumbling wall in the back storage room, they found a false panel. Behind it lay a small, dark cavity, and within it, wrapped in canvas and secured in a mildewed wooden crate, were the skeletal remains of a man. What followed was a frenzy. DNA testing confirmed the nearly impossible. It was Grandpa Jones. The feed store had been searched, of course, back when the disappearance was fresh, but only superficially. It had seemed an unlikely place. There had been no connection. But now, with hard evidence literally built into the walls, everything needed to be re-examined. How did his body end up there, hidden with such care? Who had access? Who had motive? Suddenly, the town found itself pulled into a vortex of revelation and retrospection. Those old enough to remember 2008 recalled how Grandpa Jones was something of a local institution. Respected, certainly, but also private. He had routines. He knew everyone, yet rarely confided in anyone. He spent long hours hiking, often vanishing into the woods for entire days. He carved intricate figurines he never sold and read strange books in languages most couldn't recognize. His past, it seemed, had been more complex than most ever realized. The investigation took a new electrifying turn when a letter surfaced in the possession of the town's only remaining notary. She had been cleaning out her deceased husband's desk and discovered a sealed envelope marked, "To be opened upon my death." Inside, scribbled in Grandpa Jones's unmistakable hand, was a confession, not of his own crime, but of something buried far deeper. He wrote of discovering a hidden chamber beneath the ridge near Cold Creek. In it, he found journals, tools, and relics far older than the town itself. He believed he had stumbled onto something he called the core. According to the letter, this core was a kind of subterranean node, both natural and unnatural, a convergence of energies he could only describe in metaphors. He claimed to feel time change when he was near it. He would lose hours, even days, but return home with vivid memories of places and people who hadn't existed yet. Most dismissed this as the ramblings of an old man who had spent too long in solitude, but not everyone. Caleb Runnels, with his obsessive documentation of town history, recognized a pattern. Grandpa Jones had written cryptic notes in the margins of old library books. He had cross-referenced meteorological events with animal migrations, and in several instances he made references to guardians, which he always wrote with a capital G. Suddenly the focus shifted. Maybe Grandpa hadn't simply disappeared, maybe he had been silenced. Using clues from the letter, authorities returned to the Cold Creek Ridge area and, with ground-penetrating radar, discovered a narrow shaft long since collapsed. Once excavated, it revealed a stone stairwell leading down into a dome-like chamber carved by human hands but warped by something else. The air inside was dense, humming slightly. Within the chamber, investigators found a half-rotted notebook, a rusted lantern, and carvings on the wall that depicted spirals, eyes, and an odd three-pronged symbol that no one could identify. The implications were staggering. Grandpa Jones hadn't just vanished, he had been onto something. Something buried, something hidden deliberately. The chamber beneath Cold Creek wasn't on any geological maps. It wasn't natural, at least not entirely. And yet it had been there for centuries, maybe millennia. The timeline became more puzzling when forensic analysis of Grandpa's remains revealed something chilling. His estimated time of death wasn't in 2008. It was much more recent, just under 2 years ago. That revelation shocked even the most hardened skeptics. It wasn't just a mystery of who killed Grandpa. It was where had he been all that time? Had he been alive, hiding, imprisoned? Or had he truly stepped through some temporal veil, only to be expelled later, aged and broken, his discoveries still buried within him? Adding to the enigma, no one could yet explain how his body ended up in the feed store. The structure had been locked and empty for over a decade. There was no sign of forced entry. The crate appeared untouched by time, preserved unnaturally, as though the space behind the panel existed in a bubble apart from normal decay. The canvas was too intact, the wood too dry. People began to talk again. Theories spiraled. Some said Grandpa had been taken, by whom, they didn't know, but something beyond the realm of ordinary understanding. Others suggested he had gone willingly into that chamber, trying to understand its power, and only later returned, or been returned. And a few insisted it was all orchestrated by a group that had operated quietly within the town for decades. A cabal with roots going back to the original settlers, tasked with protecting a secret so big it couldn't be allowed into daylight. Records from the town's founding hinted at strange activity in the same region Grandpa had frequented. Settler journals spoke of the lights under the ground and the place where time swallows men. One account, dated 1812, even mentioned a gray-bearded wanderer who appeared in the forest speaking in riddles and vanished before dawn. That story had always been passed off as legend, until now. Further tests on Grandpa's notebook revealed pages torn out, pages that had been removed recently. That pointed to someone else knowing the truth, maybe even more than Jones himself had uncovered. And whoever that person was, they had access to both the ridge and the feed store. The old notary's death also came under suspicion, especially once it was found that she had not died of natural causes, as initially assumed. Toxicology revealed traces of a rare, fast-acting compound in her system, one with no known manufacturer. The implications stretched beyond one man. If Grandpa Jones was indeed investigating a site with anomalous properties, then someone else had either been helping him or trying to stop him, or both. It wasn't just about one chamber beneath a ridge. The markings found inside matched those seen in other parts of the world, sites of inexplicable phenomena, many sealed off or dismissed by mainstream science. And so, Grandpa Jones's story evolved from a small-town mystery into a whisper on the global stage. Government scientists arrived quietly. Drones flew over the ridge under the cover of darkness. The land was suddenly purchased by a shell corporation with no employees and a P.O. box in Delaware. Locals who once hiked freely now found the trails gated and patrolled. But before that lockdown, Caleb and Mandy managed one final trek. Using coordinates hidden in Grandpa's carvings, they found a second chamber, smaller, untouched, and full of relics. More carvings, strange crystals emitting soft pulses, and a set of discs inscribed with symbols too complex to decode. They took photos, they took samples. And then the entrance was sealed behind them, buried in concrete, by men in black uniforms with no insignia. No one from the town talks openly now, but everyone knows. The Grandpa Jones mystery wasn't just solved, it was detonated. He hadn't simply gone missing. He had discovered something not meant to be known. His final years were spent chasing a truth he only partially understood, a truth that ultimately cost him his life. But in doing so, he cracked open a veil that had shrouded Hensley Hollow for generations. Even if the site is locked down and the media cycle is cooled, The story burns hotter than ever in private corners of the internet and the hidden spaces of academia. Scholars now debate Grandpa Jones's notes in classified seminars. Government agencies that don't officially exist have his likeness on their corkboards. And Mandy keeps carving spirals into wood, just like he did, passing them on to those who ask the right questions. The case is no longer just about who killed Grandpa Jones. It's about why, and what he knew, and why it scared someone enough to hide it for 17 years and then bury it again. But they were too late. The truth is out, and it's bigger than anyone ever imagined. Even with the veil of secrecy descending over Hensley Hollow, a current of urgency and curiosity surged through the underlayers of society. The resolution of Grandpa Jones's disappearance had triggered something more profound than mere closure. It had fractured a long-standing illusion that the world above the surface, orderly and explainable, was the only one that existed. This wasn't about folklore anymore. It wasn't about old men who disappeared in the woods. This was about a breach in what people thought was real. Word spread faster online than authorities could contain. The photos Mandy and Caleb had smuggled out of the second chamber leaked, first to obscure forums, then onto larger fringe research platforms. Linguists pored over the symbols. Geologists questioned the formation of the chamber walls, claiming they were shaped by methods unknown to modern tools. Some of the materials etched into the stone didn't match any regional mineral composition. More perplexing were the discs. Scientists who got brief access to the leaked images claimed the inscriptions on them followed no known syntax, yet displayed mathematical precision in their spacing and alignment, suggesting a language not only intelligent but engineered. The implications were cascading and impossible to digest all at once. If Grandpa Jones had indeed uncovered a site of this magnitude and had been actively engaging with it for years, what else had he found? What records had been destroyed or hidden? His carvings, once seen as rustic art, were now the subject of intense scrutiny. Each spiral, each pattern, each seemingly random gouge was cataloged. Researchers noticed patterns in the way they were grouped. Patterns that seemed to correlate with magnetic anomalies in the area, or shifts in animal migration routes. One unsettling observation stood out. The carvings Grandpa left behind intensified in the years leading up to his disappearance. He had accelerated his output dramatically, producing more carvings in his final 6 months than in the previous 5 years combined. These weren't scattered hobbies, they were warnings, or perhaps instructions. And then there was the sound. Audio technicians reviewing old recordings from Jones's property discovered a frequency buried within ambient noise. It was faint, so low it hovered below the threshold of human hearing, but once isolated, it repeated with eerie consistency. A pulse, like a heartbeat, exactly every 13.2 seconds. The same frequency, later found within the chamber under Cold Creek Ridge, now seemed tied to whatever force Jones had uncovered. When amplified, the tone reportedly caused nausea, hallucinations, or, in one unconfirmed case, temporary blackouts. Local wildlife behavior had changed since the feed store discovery. Birds no longer nested near the ridge. Coyotes stopped howling in the valley. Deer paths that once meandered around Jones's house now curved away by miles. One game camera captured an animal. Some claimed it was a large mountain cat. Others swore it was something else entirely, staring directly into the lens for over 8 minutes without blinking before the camera shut down. When rebooted, its time logs were off by 11 hours with no explanation. Among those delving deeper were international organizations. Anthropologists arrived, masquerading as regional heritage surveyors. Geophysicists rented cabins nearby. Satellite images of Hensley Hollow began to blur at key coordinates on popular mapping software, and quietly, very quietly, drones buzzed overhead at odd hours, their lights blinking in patterns that seemed almost communicative. But despite the tightening grip of control, things continued to slip through the cracks. Mandy, operating under layers of pseudonyms, began releasing sections of Grandpa's journal that had never been seen publicly. These weren't reflections or rants. They were diagrams, blueprints perhaps for something mechanical, something circular, intricate, layered like a flower opening in slow motion. She called it the wheel, and claimed Grandpa believed it was buried somewhere deeper still, beneath even the chamber he'd found. From the entries, it seemed he'd only partially mapped the wheel's location. He needed more than coordinates. He needed timing, One phrase repeated in his sketches: "It opens when the breath aligns." Scholars speculated wildly. Some suggested lunar cycles, others argued for barometric pressure shifts. But the language was poetic, metaphorical. It pointed not to physical movement, but to resonance, a kind of temporal synchronization between sight and seeker. As more files were decrypted and shared, another shocking detail emerged. Grandpa hadn't been working alone. A second name appeared repeatedly in his logs: Matter. No one in town matched the initials, but one of his old carving tools, unearthed from behind a loose floorboard, bore the inscription, "Milo Returns." That name, long forgotten by most, sent shivers through those who remembered the peculiar stranger who lived on the edge of town 2 decades ago. Milo Rennick had arrived in Hensley Hollow years before Grandpa's disappearance, only to vanish mysteriously one winter, with no record of departure. At the time, most assumed he was a drifter. Now he was back at the center of the enigma. Files from Grandpa's journal suggested Milo was a physicist, though no record of academic affiliation could be found. He was obsessed with energy pockets in the Earth and wrote about anchoring cycles that only aligned every few centuries. He and Grandpa had apparently discovered something together, something they'd attempted to conceal from others. Mandy continued digging. She found a basement beneath Grandpa's root cellar that wasn't on any blueprints. In it, a map was pinned to the wall, with colored strings connecting seemingly random places around the globe. The locations made no sense at first. A plateau in Bolivia, a salt cavern in Siberia, an underwater sinkhole in the Gulf of Mexico. But when overlaid with geomagnetic maps, the connections were clear. These were nodes in some unseen network, each sitting on seismic fault lines or energy convergences. The implication was that Grandpa's chamber wasn't unique. It was one of many. And the wheel, whatever it was, might have been the key to accessing all of them. If so, it wasn't just a local secret anymore. The knowledge Grandpa Jones died with, or was silenced for, had already begun to ripple across disciplines and borders. Think tanks convened in secret. Old enemies became sudden collaborators. Whispers circulated that the chamber under Cold Creek wasn't sealed to protect the town, but to delay access to something others desperately wanted to reach first. The implications of an interconnected ancient system capable of manipulating time or space, or both, were not only terrifying, they were potentially civilization-altering. And as always, the truth resisted ownership. For every group trying to protect it, there were others trying to control it. A leaked memo from a shadowed agency referred to the chamber as an interface node, implying it was part of a larger system, a point of contact between the human and something else. But what? What did Grandpa Jones encounter that transformed him from local eccentric to guardian of a truth larger than life? What did he see in that chamber that convinced him to risk everything to document it, to protect it, and ultimately, some believe, to hide it from even those closest to him? Some now argue he never truly left the ridge at all, that his body may have returned, but his mind, his consciousness, had crossed into another realm entirely. This isn't idle speculation among the fringes anymore. Neurologists who reviewed the structure of his recovered skull found microfractures along the parietal lobe. Fractures not caused by trauma, but possibly by intense electromagnetic exposure. What could do that? Underground, in the absence of machinery. Caleb became withdrawn after their last trip to the ridge. He stopped answering emails, disconnected his phone, shuttered his blog. His final public message was brief and cryptic. He saw what sees back. Some took it as poetic madness, others, a warning. The feed store was demolished completely within weeks of the discovery, not just leveled, erased. The land was excavated to bedrock, backfilled with concrete and fenced off. Cameras now line the perimeter. No one is allowed near, not even for questions. But that hasn't stopped those determined to follow Grandpa's trail. Pilgrimages have begun to Hensley Hollow. Some come to pay tribute, others come to find what he found. The town, once quaint and forgotten, has become a modern mecca for seekers of the inexplicable. And Mandy still walks the woods, tracing his old paths. She says the air sometimes feels thicker, heavier in certain spots. Birds go silent without warning. Her GPS jumps between coordinates. Her watch stops, then reboots. She never goes near the chamber anymore. Not because she's afraid, but because she says it's watching. That something was left behind, or perhaps never left at all. that Grandpa Jones, though gone in body, might still be present in ways no science yet understands. For 17 years, people believed they were searching for a man. What they found instead was a door. And whether it opens again or stays shut, one thing is certain. Grandpa Jones didn't just stumble upon a mystery. He became it. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the Grandpa Jones mystery finally being solved? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.